welcome to the library. Glad you could be with us again. This is our 5th lesson in our union with Christ. I suppose I can take off the hat now since we've gotten to know each other pretty good. I want us to go to Ephesians again. I love the books of Paul. He's the one that really has given us the basis of our understanding of the death of Christ. And our union with Christ is described, as he begins in Romans, as a great doctrinal book of our justification or being made right with God, and goes on to Ephesians in our doctrinal book of our sanctification or our being set apart in the heavenlies with Christ. Now, like many of our great minds of the past, the philosophers, the Stoics and the Epicureans, Plato and Aristotle. I'm more impressed with Aristotle than I am Plato, except Plato seemed to be more spiritual in his concept of what our being is. And when Paul comes along, he comes along and he gives us something that maybe not be noticed by a lot of people, but Paul is causing us to look away from ourselves, away from our being to his being, and his doing and his being. And those two, the doctrine of that is in Ephesians and Colossians. Now, let's go to Ephesians. I want to begin with Ephesians, the 2nd chapter, verse 4, and read to you all the way over to verse 16 in the next 4 or 5 minutes and explain some things. He begins like this: "But God, who is rich in mercy, for his great love wherein he loved us." Now, Paul is talking to the Gentiles, that is, those that are different from the Jews. The Jews were God's chosen people, and the chosen people rejected the Son of God, and God rejected them, and then went to the Gentiles in order to provoke the Jews to come to him so that he could save both of them. And the redemption of Christ included both. So verse 5 says, "Even when we were dead in sins," talking about the Gentiles. Now, this is before you come to Christ. You're dead in sins, plural. That's the activity, the things that we have done that are against God. "Even when we were dead in sins, hath God quickened us together with Christ." So in other words, when Christ arose from the dead, those who were dead in their sins were made alive unto God. All right, there's his reasoning. Now over in Romans, he spoke of being dead to sin by being put into Calvary. And being dead to sin meant that sin, or the Adamic nature, or the law, had no more jurisdiction over you because you died when Christ died. Now here he's talking about dead in sins. That's before you come to Christ. That I know it's a little complicated, but maybe you can understand a little better as we go along. Verse 6 says, "And hath raised us up together, and made us to sit together in heavenly places in Christ Jesus." Now, Ephesians is divided into three phases of the Christian life: sitting, walking, and standing. The sitting is our position in Christ. The walking is how we ought to live according to that position. And then the standing is how we ought to fight the battles. In other words, we shouldn't fight. To stand, and as 2 Chronicles, the 20th chapter says, see the salvation of the Lord. Stand ye still and see the salvation of the Lord. So Ephesians says that we're to stand, not so much to fight in the battle, because the battle is not ours, it's God's. If you could learn this, you would learn how Paul is saying, look outward towards Christ, to where the real battle, spiritual battle, is taking place, and he's winning it all the time. And verse 7 says that in the ages to come, now at the time he's writing, in that age was still the age of everything being fulfilled. After 70 AD, nothing else is written. Now, a lot of folks think the Revelation was written in 92 AD. If so, then why didn't it recognize the fact that Jerusalem was destroyed in 70 AD? It didn't. The angel told the author there to go and measure the temple. And so Revelation must have been written before. In fact, I believe all of the books of the New Testament were written before the great cataclysm of the destruction of the temple. It's too important not to be mentioned. But they all were anticipating that to happen, but none of them said that it had happened in their writings. So that's the reason I believe everything was written before 70 AD. That in the ages to come, now that's beyond 70 AD, the exceeding riches of his grace and his kindness towards us, he might show through Jesus Christ. And so in this age in which we live, which are the ages to come, this age, he's showing his kindness towards us through Jesus Christ. If you're going to know anything about God's love, you're going to have to take a good look at Jesus Christ. And verse 8, he says, for by grace are you saved through faith, that not of yourselves, it is the gift of God. For by grace are you saved. Now, saved is a big 50-cent word that means that you were saved and you had nothing to do with it. We'll take that up in the next lesson.